I'm Katie, and I have spent years studying and deep diving into the astrology, cultures, and the myths around the world. And I really kind of struggled piecing them all together until one of my kids had me sit down and watch Harry Potter. I now keep in mind when I read the books 20 years ago when they first came out. Um, I wasn't into the mythology and the astrology and the cultures and the linguistics around the world. But as I rewatched it and then I had to reread it, it opened up. I just couldn't help noticing how Harry Potter weaved it all together. So here on this channel, we're going to deep dive into each film, and not just the stories, because my God, the story line is amazing, but the underlying reflection and how it reflects in real life. Because Harry Potter is a series that is so full of magic. But what if I told you that that magic is rooted in real legends, astrology, and ancient cultures? And that's what we're going to explore here. And my God, my ADHD hyperdrive fall down over the last couple years into this is so deep. It is so deep. So please, I hope you enjoy this. I hope you follow along. And I really want to build a community where we actually see what Harry Potter is actually written about. Because first of all, I want to start by talking about where J.K. Rowling actually got her information. So come along. Let's do this. It's going to be so much fun. So first of all, I want to talk about J.K. Rowling in itself. She's brilliant. I think we can all admit that she's brilliant, but either she is the world's best researcher, and I'm not just talking on one subject, like an expert in one subject. She has to be an expert in all the subjects. Like I'm talking astrology, I'm talking symbology, I am talking cultures, I'm talking religions, I'm talking the gods and the mythology, and even the human psyche, because it is so prevalent in all of these aspects. So either she is a massive researcher in history, because a lot of the characters that actually show up in the book, say such as the first book, Nicholas Flamel, he did exist, and he did come across in mysticism something called the Sorcerer's Stone. And we're going to get into that. That's actually the next episode, but it's going to be all about Nicholas Flamel and what the real Sorcerer's Stone really is. But there is so much in this. And this episode, since I'm uploading this on September 21st, I want to upload it on just the arrival of Hogwarts through the platform in 9 3/4 and the Sorting Hat. Because a Sorting Hat is all about astrology, really. I mean, the houses. When the Sorting Hat places the students in the houses, it's pulling up certain characteristics that the student carries, and it's placing them in their house, right? And their house very much reflects astrological signs and the astrological elements. And so we're going to be getting into that. And then I want to talk about the symbology and the numerology of the 9 3/4. A lot of people think it's just this quirky little number, but it actually holds so much meaning. So real quick, just about me, my name is Katie. Welcome. If you found this page, you found it because you are obsessed with Harry Potter, just like I am. And we are going to break it down together. So I have my notes here just to make sure that I'm not forgetting anything, because I have really kind of struggled with how to even present this because it's so much information. It's kind of, where do I start? So I really want to start with the Sorting Hat. Right. And then I'll regress back into the significance of the 9 3/4 platform. But the Sorting Hat, when you put on the hat at Hogwarts and it looks at your traits, like I said before, it very much aligns with the elements of astrology. And in astrology, there's 4 elements. There's air, earth, water, and fire, right? And all of our zodiac signs fall into one of those 4 categories. So, what we're going to do real quick is we are going to actually kind of put our sorting hat on and see where we fall according to our sun sign. Now, Gryffindor, the house of Gryffindor, that would very much be fire, right? So, that would be the astrology signs of Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And those traits that the fire signs carry, they're courageous, they're bold, and they're very passionate, right? So, for example, Aries is very much the Gryffindor's drive head first, right? They're the ones diving into a project and taking control of it before any of the other signs even have their shoes on, right? They have that whoomp and they just get in there and they do it, right? Then we have Leo, which is the other fire sign, and they love to shine, right? The Gryffindors, they really stood out among all of them because of the pride that they carried over their accomplishments. And then Sagittarius, they're constantly seeking adventure. They are philosophers. They are the ones that are seeking such wisdom and to nourish who they are. And through a lot of times, the wisdom for a Sagittarius comes through exploration. It comes through travel. It comes through higher wisdom. So the fire signs very much are the Gryffindors of Hogwarts houses. Now on to the second one. We're going to go to the earth signs, and they would very much be classified under Hogwarts, right? And so we're talking Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorns. And the reason why they would be under Hufflepuff is because the traits that they carry is loyalty, patience, and practicality, right? Like Virgo, Hufflepuff values service. And Virgos are all about service. Service to others, service to the community, service to anybody or anything, service to animals, anything that they really feel pulls on their heartstrings. And then you have Taurus. They're grounded and they are steady, right? Like you get yourself a Taurus friend and that friend will always ground you when you feel like your life is chaotic. And then you have the Capricorn. They are quietly achieving through persistence. They are the sign that never gives up, right? If you have a project that is due for work or school or whatever it may be, and if you have a Capricorn on your side, it's going to be it's stellar, right? Because they're going to make sure every check is marked, every T is crossed, every die is dotted. They are persistence, they are structure, and they are discipline, right? And so now we're going to go on to the air sign. Air signs are very much the Ravenclaws, right? And the air signs would be the Gemini, the Libras, and the Aquariuses, okay? And their traits, they're all about their intellect. They're about their ideas and their communication, right? Because the air signs, it's all mental. And so Gemini, like Ravenclaws, chase knowledge. Geminis are always seeking something higher than them. In Libras, they are all about balance and perspective, right? And Ravenclaws were very much about balance and having a healthy perspective of everything around them so they can see clearly. And then we have Aquarians. Aquarians are our innovators. They're our rebels. They go against the limits and they push, and they're also our humanitarians. So think of like Luna Lovegood. I mean, she really kind of embodied all of these with a little bit of super quirkiness, but that's the Aquarius, right? Aquarians are quirky. So, and now let's move on to the Slytherin household. And they are the water signs. We're talking Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And those are the traits. Their traits are depth, intuition, strategy, and emotion. And they also carry a huge level of loyalty, right? Just like the earth signs, the water signs are just as loyal as the earth signs are, because it takes a lot. Like Cancers, especially Cancers, they are so loyal because they protect what they truly love, right? They are protectors of their own. If they have collected you, count yourself special, because they will do anything for you. And then like Scorpio, they're ambitious and they're intense. Scorpio is all about transformation, transmuting and transformation. And so they're dark and they're moody, but they have this underneath of, intensity to them. I don't know how to really explain, like how to get it out in an articulated way, but it's a level of intensity that can kind of shake the ground. Now, Pisces carries the hidden depth of imagination and creativity, right? They kind of walk the line between the seen and the unseen. Pisces they feel both worlds, right? So these are our houses. And looking at our astrology, we're going to find, and we're going to dig deep into this throughout this channel. We will go into very much astrology episodes. But this is just an introduction to sort you into your house and what it kind of means. And so in order to do this and then to know how to write her characters for these houses, J.K. Rowling really had to have a hard understanding of astrology. And so, every culture has its sorting hat. Every culture has its way of seeing the magic, and every culture has its way of expressing that, right? And we can really kind of see all of that and how it's expressed through our astrology chart. And like this we'll have episodes on this, so it's to come. But now I want to get on to the next topic of discussion, which is the numerology aspect. Now, in numerology, in the movie, we hear the platform 9 3/4. And we think it's just this fun, quirky little, it's 9 3/4. It's between platform 9 and platform 10. And I always wondered, why was it 9 3/4? Why wasn't 9.5 if we're putting it right in the middle? Well, and then I started to go down through numerology and symbology. And I have actually found some pretty amazing things. So in numerology, 9 is all about completions, endings, wisdom, and intuition, right? And then we have like the 9 3/4. Because it's a fraction, it represents a state of in between, right? So like a threshold or a liminal world between the edges of reality, if that makes sense. And so 9 3/4, it's almost whole, but it's not quite. And so what this is meaning is you're actually stepping into a realm that isn't bound to ordinary logic. And so when you start to think of it like that, you start to see that it hints at a hidden dimension at an exact kind of secret entrance you'd actually kind of expect for a magical train, right? Because if it's a hidden dimension, it means that when they are leaving the Muggle world and they're entering the platform in 9 3/4, which is then going to take them to Hogwarts, right? Their school of magic. They're actually not just going to, they're jumping different dimensional densities. And so then when we look at that in a scientific form, what we know is we're at the third dimensional density, and you can only perceive your dimensional density and below. So we're at the third dimensional density, but anything higher than us can perceive us, but we can't perceive it. And so that may be ghosts. And some people may say, well, I can see ghosts. Well, it's probably because even though your life right here is in the third dimensional density, your consciousness may be higher. That's why you have people who can see ghosts and communicate with ghosts, because even though they are living a life in the third dimensional density, their consciousness or their mind state is actually vibrating higher than the third dimensional density. But now we can also have this conversation about dimensional beings being able to lower their density into us so we can perceive them. And this could come with like a lot of mystical beliefs, when you actually get into traditions around the world, especially there's a lot of indigenous stories and cultures associated with what we commonly known as a Sasquatch. And it said once upon a time, indigenous tribes lived in unison with them. And so when you actually get into the mysticism and the science behind the mysticism, you start to see that maybe the Sasquatch is what they are dimensional beings. And so they have the ability to shift their dimensional density and lower it into the third dimensional density, which allows us the ability to perceive them, if that makes sense. But that will be another topic, especially when we get into the forest, right? The forest. And because I think there's a lot of dimensional overlap, representation in the forest outside of Hogwarts, because that's where you have the centaurs, and that's where you have, the unicorn, and you have all of the mystical creatures are living in that area. And if you are actually watching this, I hope it's because you actually do have a curiosity that there might be something bigger than what we know. I always tell people, I joke with people that watch, what we find out is mythology is actually history, and what we think is history will become mythology. Because I think the world is much more magical than what we have been conditioned to believe it is. So why not? I think a world thinking that maybe fairies and dragons and unicorn, that they once walked this earth, is so much more fun than to think, oh no, that could never happen. Let's make it fun. Let's make it, let's make life fun. So now let's actually take the 9 3/4 and merge them together and figure out the symbology and the meaning behind that. Okay. So when you combine 9 3/4, you're getting the energy of completion plus liminal threshold. Okay. And so in that, it symbolized the initiation of higher realms through a door space, through a portal. And then when you take 9 3/4 and you break it down to one unit, that would be 9.75. And if you take 9 plus 7 plus 5, that values 21, and 21 values 3. And 3 is all about the number of creativity. It's all about the number of imagination, and it's all the number all about self-expression, the very essence of what Hogwarts magic is. So I think there is so much more to the platform being 9 3/4 than just a quirky number that she just made up. So, and once again, that takes a level of research and knowledge that, unless you have spiraled down the spiral hole or you were exposed to it, because there are some cultures where you are exposed to this as a part of your teaching, your education. But now let's get into the myths and the cultural parallels within this 9 3/4 and the different cultures and how they perceive this concept between different realms, right? In the different mythologies, let's look at the Celtic lore, right? The Celtic lore, it's always represented the separation between reality and the other world is with a doorway or mist or crossroads. I mean, think of, like, we have all those shows of the mist and the crossroads between the big stones, right? And we have that a lot in just the UK in general, within the Celtic lore, and all of that with the Stonehenge. Stonehenge is in obviously southern UK, but it's also interlinked, right, with the Druids and all of that. And then we have the Hindu tradition, and the Hindu tradition are their doorway into the divine is what's called the twilight hours. And that's generally between the hours of 3 and 5. And that's pretty magical, simply because, like that, there are so many religions around the world where people actually wake up at 3 a.m. to do their prayer. And we're going to actually get into the science behind why it's 3 o'clock. We've always been taught it's 3 o'clock from our mystical, like, from our teachings. But there's actually science that actually proves that the electromagnetic field around the earth is thinner at that time frame, allowing that barrier between us and the divine to be much thinner, to kind of be paper thin, so we can actually push through. But let's get into folklore real quick with like witches, spirits, and magic. They found that the theory is you're neither here nor there, right? So we're always constantly living between the two, reality and the mystical side, right? So we have our conscious and our sub. It's kind of the concept in psychology of the conscious and the subconscious, right? And so platform 9 3/4 is actually, she's trying to emulate or awaken the door within all of us between our human side and our celestial side, right? Our side that we have chosen to come into this life and live this experience aspect of us, and then the aspect of us that is a higher spirit, right? So think of it as like the soul and the spirit. Maybe might be a really good way to explain it. But I really want to talk before, because this is getting long enough for the first episode. I want to talk about the electromagnetic field and why and the science behind why 3 and 5 are said to be actually the best time to manifest. So if you want to manifest, science actually proves that is actually the time to wake up between 3 and 5. And really, I personally, through my research, have actually shown between like 3 and 3:30 in the morning. So because that is kind of where we are in this state of like magnetic thinning around the earth, because our bodies have something called a toroidal field around us, right? The scientific name is the toroidal field. Now, the woo-woo name is like your auric field. The indigenous refer to it as your illumination field. And it's this electromagnetic field that circles around our body constantly. We can measure it with the technology we have in society today. Now, everything in life is a mirrored image, and so many cultures speak of this. Our ancient texts speak of this, how everything's a mirrored image. And because we have this toroidal field around our body, our earth has electromagnetic field around it as well. It's called the Van Allen belt. But when the earth's electromagnetic field and the geomagnetic system is in the state of pre-dawn hours, so 3 to 5, there are often several externally driven, like near surface magnetic ionosphere signals that are also at their weakness, because you are in this pre-dawn, post-night energy, right? You're kind of on the threshold between the two, between day and night. It's this area. And since you are you're neither here nor there, sort of like, when the platform in 9 3/4, you're kind of in this state of limbo. And because you're in the state of limbo, it's like the force field that kind of divides the earthly realm from the celestial realm or the divine is thinner. So instead of having to scream across the room to try to get someone's attention, they're standing literally right next to you, and you can just sort of whisper it in, and you can get the same effect. And so I think this is all really cool, and I am so excited. My next episode, I really want to get into Nicholas Flamel. He was a real person, and he did uncut, and he is well known in the mysticist community as someone who once upon a time in the 1300s, the late 1300s, early 1400s, which would make him about 700 years old today, and that's how old he was around in Harry Potter. He actually discovered something in alchemy that is called the Sorcerer's Stone. So, yeah, that's going to be our next episode. And there is so much connection between Harry Potter and the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran. There is so in the Torah and all of our religious texts, even the Nag Hammadi and the Tibetan and the Tao. There is so many overlay. So not only did J.K. Rowling have to have this information, she had to have such an extensive knowledge of the different religions. And then the ancient texts, because our religions go from anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000 years. But then we have two sets of texts that predate our religious texts, one being the Sumerian Green Tablet, and the other one being the Book of the Vedas. And those go anywhere estimated from 10 to 12,000 years. And so there is so much overlay of, either she is absolutely brilliant, and yes, she is creative and she is brilliant, but brilliant to a level that the human brain couldn't quite comprehend, or she may have channeled this down from a higher realm. Because I think, and even let's take our religious texts. Our religious texts were written in times for the demographic of their age. It was written in a way for the demographic of that time to understand it. I don't know if we are able to identify with those texts, as horrible as that might come across to some people, is we're able to identify with those texts as strongly today, because it wasn't written for us in the world we live in. Like with the technology we live in, with the advancements we live in, and the world we live in. And so I think we needed a new, I think the universe, God, source, love, Brahma, Allah, whatever you call is bigger than you. I think it knew we needed something new in order to direct us. And when we get into it, we're even going to pull a lot of psychology in, because I do think Harry and Voldemort, it's a difference of the soul and the ego, right? And I also think it's when you get into like the book of Revelations, it talks about, like the Christ and the Antichrist. But Jesus Christ was called Jesus Christ because Jesus was his name, the white, who we put in the Bible, right? The name. But Christ wasn't his last name. Christ was his level of consciousness. Christ was the activation of his crystalline DNA. And because of that, when you look at it that way, you see Christ is a level of consciousness that is supposed to be rebirthed into all of us. And so if that is the case, then the Antichrist isn't a person, but rather it's a level of consciousness that is in all of us. And so even when in the book of, book 5 in the Order of the Phoenix, when Harry is at Sirius's house, and they're looking at the wall, and Harry is like, I think I have so much darkness. And Sirius even says there's light and darkness in all of us. It's what we choose to concentrate on. And then also another thing, when I went to the Sasquatch and I was talking about the mythical creatures, think of the last book when Voldemort had killed Harry, and he was up in the heavens, and Dumbledore came to him, and when he was leaving, and Harry said, my question for you is this real, or is this in my head? And Dumbledore laughed, and he said, of course this is in your head, Harry, but what makes it not real? I think there's so much that we are going to unravel, and I am already probably 20 minutes over than what I wanted to give as my intro. So please come back. I have so much to say, and I really want to build a community, and I want to hear other people's opinions, and I want other people to get in on this conversation, because I really want to talk about this. I really want to talk about this. I think all the secrets to life is in Harry Potter. So thank you for coming. My name is Katie, and I hope to see you on the next episode.